Outsourcing tends to have a bad reputation as being low quality. Partner Hero's value-based approach raises the bar for the outsourcing industry by investing in employee empowerment and career growth, paying above-market salaries, and maintaining a focus on quality and performance. They're more than a service provider. They're also a thought partner for the startups they serve. It's simple. Brands that care about quality customer experience choose Partner Hero. They offer flexible terms and the ability to scale quickly, perfect for startups, with quality assurance baked into every program and offices around the world. So Partner Hero can provide truly global coverage. Outsourcing has long been available mainly to big businesses, but Partner Hero is challenging business as usual by bringing the benefits of outsourcing to businesses of all sizes with short, flexible contracts and fast ramp-up times. 10 years ago, when we were launching the Action Catalyst, we could have used a few extra hands to help us scale quickly, even if it was just for a short while. You can bet that with their expertise, fast onboarding, and core focus on quality, Partner Hero would have had our attention. If you're ready to bring in outside customer support help for your startup that feels like it's a part of an existing team, check out Partner Hero. Head over to partnerhero.com/Action Catalyst to book a free consultation with our solutions team. Mention you heard about Partner Hero from the Action Catalyst, and they'll even waive the setup fee. Now, on to the show.
From Nashville, Tennessee, Southwestern Family of Companies welcomes you to the Action Catalyst. Each week, we share insights and inspiration from movers and shakers in the world of business. Our goal is to help you increase your self-discipline, overcome procrastination, and help you to take action on all the things that really matter.
The personal brand. What a new phenomenon. Personal branding. And we got the guy here who wrote the book on it today that you're going to hear from. And it's a little bit of a dilemma for me. There's a little bit of almost like an ethical kind of thing here. And we'll talk through that after this interview. And I think, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Like, I would love for you to tweet at me, go to Twitter and just let me know what are your thoughts on personal branding? Do you think it's worthwhile? Do you think it's just, it's too much self-indulgence? Like, where are you at on this? And I'll share with you a little bit of my personal struggle and how it's affected some of our team here. And then also, I'm going to share with you just sort of 6 secrets of building the personal brand. 6 things that are very controllable. They don't cost money, but these are things that you can do to build your profile if you're interested in it and you do buy into this. Because it is a part of the world today, whether we like it or not. And if you decide that you want to leverage your own personal brand and really start building your profile, I'm going to share with you some practical ways that you can really get into doing that and make it happen quickly. So that's what's on the docket for today, personal branding. I think you're going to like it. As always, I hope you do. Welcome back. Please make sure you're tweeting your questions at me, and we'll get started just after this message.
This episode is sponsored by Southwestern Coaching. Southwestern Coaching has helped over 11,000 people increase their incomes by over 25% on average. As a successful salesperson, you know the importance of increasing your sales, but sometimes you might just need a little extra push and accountability to meet your goals and grow your business. Southwestern Coaching will help you increase your income through one-on-one sales and leadership coaching tailored specifically to your needs. Together, we will elevate sales. To schedule your free one-on-one business action planning session with a Southwestern coach, go to www.southwesternconsulting.com/action catalyst.
One of the things that I love about the world of podcasting and online marketing and social and all that is just I meet really cool people, like people who are way cooler than I probably deserve to meet that I just kind of come across. And Dessi is one of these guys. He's a super cool dude. He is the CEO of a company called Silverback Social. He's a columnist for Inc. He's a TEDx speaker. We're going to talk a little bit about it. He had a TED Talk on vulnerability, and he's the author of a couple books. His new book is called Remarkable You, build a personal brand, and take charge of your career. And I'm excited, as with many of my guests, to serve my own selfish interest to get free advice right here on the air. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. And I want to lead with saying I'm a huge fan of yours. Huge fan. I think your message is powerful, impactful, and positive. And anybody that can be powerful, impactful, and positive, I am all about, and I am all aboard. So thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. And so the personal branding here is, I think, a fascinating thing that is happening is this evolution of the personal brand. So can you kind of give us the definition of exactly what is personal branding?
Sure. I think for a lot of different people, it means different things. But for me and for my journey, what it meant was the idea of stepping out into the sort of proverbial world and saying, I'm an expert at what I do. And being able to be discoverable to the people in my vertical as said expert. And the reason why that became my definition is because, we're talking about, close to 8 or 9 years ago now, I was a director of sales at an ad network. I've been in digital for 16 years. And I started this personal branding journey simply because I was ambitious. I was a director of sales that wanted to be a vice president of sales, and I loved my boss. I didn't want to take his job. He was the VP, and I realized that the only people that knew how good I was at my job were my clients and my boss, and that was a problem. This became a limiting factor in my career, my well-being, and in my life. I was newlywed. My wife was newly pregnant, and I wanted to buy a home for her in a bucolic suburb of New York. We were living in a tiny studio apartment, so I needed to take action. I needed to do something drastic and do something definitive. And for me, at that time, the first step in personal brand building was creating a blog.
Mm-hmm. Now, so I do want to talk about the blog because it's a pretty captivating story about how you made like $250,000 off of this blog post. So I do want to talk about that. But I first, I like you, but I want to pick a fight with you a little bit or understand here, because I think there's this explosion of personal branding, right? And
Sure.
and now everybody is an expert,
Right.
And because social has given us that power, which I think it's not really that everybody's an expert, but it's easy for experts to present themselves as experts, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think the conflict is coming that companies have protecting the brand of a company is really critical. Like I think of Southwestern Consulting, right? Like we have a collective, we're basically a collection of individuals. I mean, that's what every company is. Do you think that it's possible for people to have a personal brand and still work inside of a larger company brand?
I do. And I think the executives that we work with at larger enterprise entities do come to us with wringing hands with that concern, saying, I'd like to build my personal brand, but I also work for an organization that has a definitive brand zeitgeist, if you will,
Right.
that I don't want to deviate from. I am on the, XYX brand train. I don't want to get off the XYX brand train. I'd like to just say that I am an expert alongside or within my brand. And I think that that's where people get confused. It's almost like when people initially flinch about social media that really don't understand social media. The reason why they flinch is because they think of the Facebook icon, they think of the Twitter icon, they think of Snapchat, they think of the Kardashians, they think of, the first reaction I'll get from executives that don't want to do it is, who cares what I had for lunch? And I need to take a step back and say, listen, I understand your concerns, but I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I have a master's degree in direct marketing. What we're going to be doing when it comes to personal brand building has nothing to do with posting pictures about your lunch. Unless, in fact, unless, of course, you run a food services company and that's definitively appropriate. The personal brand building is going to be about content generation. It's going to be about video content. It's going to be about custom, unique content for each social platform that's going to be paced out over an appropriate time period, that's going to be associated with a content calendar that's going to have a definitive ROI and a track back to performance-based optics that are going to be associated with key performance indicators for your organization. This is not going to be willy-nilly. There's going to be a strategy here, and there's going to be a definitive focus on achieving something. Now, the pushback when somebody says you can't have that within an organization, if the strategy and if those different notches up the belt as you climb that ladder are definitively in line within the organization, what happens is it amplifies everything. It is definitively compound interest, right? We were talking earlier where I said he had a quote that I thought was fantastic where he talked about automated marketing is to marketing what compound interest is to finance. And I think similarly, when it comes to personal brand building, when executives within an organization are building their personal brand, if done properly and if done synergistically with the strategy and the vision and the values of an organization, can only amplify it and buoy everything that's happening. So when one executive has 5 social profiles that are all articulating that executive's expertise, but backlinking to the organization, what do you have? You have powerful backlinks that Google is saying, wow, this is not a bot. This is something that's appropriate. This is being updated weekly and or even daily. So this content is of value. I'm going to then reference that organization higher than every other organization. All of that is good if it's done properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, to me, one of the things that I think is so funny and really stupid that most companies, they're like, all right, let's launch a social media profile. And they immediately think, okay, how can we get more followers? And they completely ignore the fact that if you just add up all the followers of every employee in the company, they already have instant access to potentially millions of people, but they don't think about just leveraging their people's own individual platforms. And I think that's why I think the personal branding is a fairly new term, but I think it's fascinating. It'll be fascinating to see how this shapes up, particularly because what I feel like we have right now is we have this sort of divergence where you got people like, okay, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid of the company. I'm fully on the ship. I'm a blue shirt at IBM. I'm doing that. And then you have the sort of rebels going, the heck with corporate America. I'm starting my own blog and I'm going to have my own thing. And I'm going to do that.
So I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go the opposite direction. I'm gonna look at it from a different optic. Okay. And I'm gonna say that's fantastic, because if in fact within your organization there are people that are on the tertiary edges of leaving your organization anyway, and by building a personal brand they're going to jump ship, good riddance. Get rid of them. You want the blue shirts at IBM marching your march and pounding your drum and doing what you want to do, and you're going to build that culture so that everybody is in lockstep and allowing for that. If in fact that's your culture, if your culture is your Tony Hsieh and you're out at Zappos and everybody is unique. I don't know if you've been to Vegas and you've toured their factory, but I've been lucky enough to do it. And every individual at Zappos is definitively an individual, and I bet Tony Hsieh would be like, yeah, man, build your personal brand, be the renegade, be the outlier and do that. If those people that are building their personal brand are sort of articulating themselves as outliers in your organization, then you're just expediting a process that might take 2, 5, 10 years. That's going to cost your company money by keeping them underneath the roof of your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tony, of course, is famous for paying people. I think it's $2,000. He pays them $2,000 to give them a chance to leave after 30 days or something that they've been there, which I think is great. And I love what you're saying there about kind of fine, if someone's looking for a reason to leave, give them a reason to leave, let them go. But I think the power here, which people haven't exploited yet, is the power of the alignment between the personal brand and the company brand, which is kind of what you're talking about. What you're talking about here. So what are some of the things Are there any other things that you think, like in terms of reasons why companies are afraid of personal branding and maybe why they shouldn't be?
I think they're afraid of personal branding because they don't want to be outshone by their executives. And I mean, I feel at this point, and in 2016, that organizations are figuring out that social media is not the bane of our existence, that it can be exceptionally powerful. And frankly, for some organizations, it doesn't work. For some organizations, it's not appropriate. And for some organizations, people building a personal brand can be a detriment. I've worked extensively with financial organizations writing their social media and privacy policy so that it limits that activity, and they don't want their executives speaking because what their executives say could potentially sway markets, and that could be a very powerful and bad thing. So they don't want to do that. But really, what happens is when the organizations understand that they can deal with content marketing, and what I mean by content marketing, if people don't understand, I'm just blog content, LinkedIn blogging, corporate blogging, allowing for the executives to have a voice. You can curate that content. You can have an internal HR, PR, social media, digital executive be the curator of interviews of executives, and you could feature and profile those executives to build their personal brand profile. But perhaps it's not them generating that content on a regular basis, that is definitively curated from the organization, that's in lockstep with a definitive marketing plan. We do that for many larger organizations that have very strict parameters. We just say, okay, give us your top 10 executives and we will interview them, and we will create a structure and an outline for the blog posts, and then we will backfill that with certain content, and then we use that as the content marketing strategy moving forward. The content marketing strategy and the personal brand building can all be interwoven, all connected in order to deal with a beautiful marketing strategy, overarching marketing strategy.
Yeah. Well, and we're, I don't know, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Jay Baer.
I am. Yeah, I like him a lot.
So Jay's a good buddy.
Haters, right?
Yeah, he's a great buddy of mine, and he's been on the show a couple times. And so we're all about the content marketing drum. So isn't there a risk though still, Chris? Like, isn't there a risk of having your executives be branded? I mean, that's a very legitimate concern, right? Is that the CEO, like if you're Tony Hsieh, you become branded and then you leave Zappos. I mean, is that something that the company shouldn't care about, or there's things they should do to mitigate that, or like what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, you should be concerned about it. But it's just the way it is. I've lost executives at Silverback because I've buoyed them and they've done an exceptional job and they've left. And guess what? They left on great terms. And I gave them a big hug and I was like, wow, congratulations. You got to that other organization. And they essentially used their, what they were learning at Silverback and where they were being featured at Silverback as a stepping stone for them. And I think that that's great. And I think it's our job as heads of organizations, right? Like you've got a few hundred employees or people that are working in lockstep with Southwestern to make sure that we're giving them the tools, the infrastructure, and the systems in place so that they don't leave. And it is something that we need to be concerned about as modern business owners, but I think it's a good thing. I think it makes our organizations better. It makes us more attentive to the people. It makes us less likely to feel like those people are cogs in a machine, that they're actually human beings that have needs, wants, feelings, desires, and vision and aspirations, and they are, they want to do more than what they've just been given on their plate, that they want to stretch their goals. I think that these are all great things, and if all it is an organization has to take a closer look at its own corporate culture and own corporate identity, well, then that's just the way it is, and too bad. Keep doing that.
Yeah, I love that. And that's very, very bold, but it's like, it's the same as it's always been. Like, what is the corporate culture other than the collection of its people? Now it's just amplified, and it can be amplified bad, or like you're saying, if you embrace it, you educate them, you give them the tools, it can be a tremendous amplification of good. It's just the same way. It's like social media isn't good or bad, just like money isn't good or bad. It's just a tool, and how you use it and what your strategies are. They just amplify it.
I'm with you. And I got to tell you, the smartest large organizations, and I've been very lucky to deal with a few of them, like a handful of them. I produce an event, and at the event, it's a brick and mortar live event, and we curate speakers to come to the event. And largely, we try to get speakers from the client side. We don't want anybody pitching agency stuff. We don't want guys like me at Silverback, or guys like you that might say, oh, we can work as a consultant. We want people from Mastercard MasterCard, from General Electric, from IBM, that are talking about their experiences. Now, what happens when you put those people on a stage? Those people that are going to be on a stage are going to have a Twitter following, and that Twitter following is going to be largely influenced by what those people say on stage, and those people are going to have to cultivate that Twitter following. And guess what? Then they're going to have a public-facing Facebook page. Then guess what? They're going to have their own personal blog, and they're going to write about their own opinions, even though they work for an IBM or a GE or a MasterCard. And those people, frankly, become the most interesting, the most compelling people. It's the Linda Boffs of the world from GE. It's the Tammy Canizaros of the world, who used to be at IBM and is now at Oracle. You know, it's all of those people become the people that I use as my sort of North Star of marketing understanding and marketing ideas. And who would have known, 20 years ago that I would have access to a high-ranking executive at General Electric, where I could just, log into a Twitter feed and see where she's speaking at the next conference to hear what her thoughts are about whatever is happening that day. I think that that's a wonderful thing for GE, and that's the best thing for GE, and they should continue to do that.
So let's talk about, I think, so let's shift the conversation more around the book, because that, I think that's the fascinating discussion that I was really wanting to have with you, is how does personal branding fit in with the corporate brand? That's not really what the book is about. The book is the book, again, is called Remarkable You: Build a Personal Brand and Take Charge of Your Career. And it's a delightful little book.
Thank you.
And it's a quick read. And can you just talk to us a little bit about what are some of the core things that people can be doing to really build their own personal brand, whether that's part of a company or it's on their own?
I mean, listen, I could go through the steps for the core things. I'm going to back up. So the reason why I wrote the book, maybe that's where we'll start. The reason why I wrote the book is I'm lucky enough to speak to audiences every once in a while about social media and digital marketing, right? And I would get off stage and people would say, wow, that sounds really interesting, but I don't know where to start. I have nothing to say, and I'm not really sure what to do. So I went about trying to create this sort of insulated process where nobody had any excuses anymore. So I was kind of coming at it as part motivational, part kind of smacking people in the back of the head, and part saying, hey, you wouldn't be at this position in this organization if you didn't already understand what you're doing really well. Like, you wouldn't be upper management if you weren't really good at something and didn't have something to say about your industry. So let me tell you my story. And I just talked about my being, motivated to continually climb up the corporate ladder. And then I was able to say, okay, great. So here's step one. Get introspective. Step two, start a blog, firstname.lastname.com, because of SEO capabilities and the ability of sort of squatting on your name. And oh, by the way, if you don't know how to launch a blog, you no longer have any excuses, because if you go to chrisdessi.com and you search for launch my blog in 15 minutes or less, I've got a 28-step guide for you to launch your blog in 15 minutes. So after 20 minutes, when you've launched the blog, then we can continue to talk. After you've become introspective, think about some of the things that you're good at, think about some of the things that you're passionate about, and start writing content from there. Now, that's just the at the core of the book. The other tertiary things become, all right, how do I go about writing a compelling headline? Well, you might want to use CoSchedule's headline analyzer. How do I go about becoming a better writer? Well, you might want to install the Hemingway app so that you become a better writer, because it's called the Hemingway app, because instead of writing at 12th grade reading level, we really want to write at a 4th grade reading level. We've all been lied to, right? We want to write, Hemingway because he wrote Old Man and the Sea at apparently a 4th grade reading level. So these are the different tools that I use in order to curate and generate that content, and those are the recommendations. And then once you start doing that, it's almost like taking baby steps to creating this definitive vision of what you are as a personal brand. So if you envision yourself as a vice president of sales and you're a sales manager right now, what are the steps that you need to take? Well, you need to prove that you're good at prospecting. So we're going to generate content about prospecting. What are the ways that you go about prospecting? And then that becomes your content calendar for the content that you start to create, and then you go from there, because it's all about taking that first step. So that's really, without going through, here's step number one, step number two, that's the general energy behind the book. And it is small. I did that on purpose. I wanted to make it a quick, general read to just get people thinking and say, hey, I am remarkable. There is something about me that's remarkable. And to be able to go out and share that with the world, because we've all got something appropriate to share with the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just like anything, I think branding is what do people think of when they think of you, and what do you know of value that you have to share? And I think you outlined just a real simple, way to do that. Chris, where do you want people to go to connect with you?
ChrisDessi.com, ChrisDessi.com. They can find me on Twitter at Chris Dessi, and they can Google Chris Dessi and find my TED Talk as well, which I'm very, very proud of.
Yeah, and that's the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think, your TED Talk isn't specifically necessarily about personal branding, but it's about something that's very powerful. The word is vulnerability. Can you just talk to us a little bit about why does that matter to you, and why is that important, and how does that apply to personal branding?
Sure. I think it applies to personal branding because it applies to life, but I think you nailed on something earlier where you're kind of like, everybody can be an expert. And I think it's probably born from that is that, guys like you and I who've kind of put in our probably our 20,000, 30,000 hours instead of 10,000 hours, really kind of, been out there and done the work. You get a little frustrated when you get other guys coming in and saying, I'm this, I'm that. And you're kind of like, whatever. So I decided to go the opposite route. Instead of pounding my chest and being boastful, I went pure raw. And I said, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, but I wasn't a born entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur because I got fired. And when I got fired, I couldn't speak when I got fired. I was probably having a panic attack when it happened because I was so surprised. And when it happened, I was terrified because I have a wife and a mortgage and kids and, one little girl and another beautiful baby girl on the way. And when I started writing about that and I started talking about my truth and what I was really going through, and not to be, a Debbie Downer or depressive, but just to be like, listen, this is the real stuff. This is really what goes on. It's not all models and bottles. It's not, being an entrepreneur, it can be a grind. It can be brutal on your family. And when I started doing that, I saw this really beautiful backlash of warmth and affection and acceptance from other entrepreneurs that were like, yeah, man, rock on, keep spitting truth, that type of a thing. And when I was given the opportunity to deliver, it was a TEDx talk, not a TED Talk, to be clear. TEDx are locally curated events, so this is not like I was invited to the TED stage. But when I was given that opportunity, they approached me to talk about social media because that's what I'm known for, digital marketing and personal branding. And I sat with my wife and I really got introspective about it. And I said, I'm lucky that I do a lot of public speaking, that I've done a lot of television appearances and I've written some books, but I've got two little girls that are 8 and 5. And I think I might be wrong, but I think the TEDx talk might be around for a while. So what is the message that I want to communicate to my daughters? And I went about like really kind of trying to figure out what that was. And I landed on vulnerability because I really feel that whether it be in business, whether it be in personal relationships, whether it be in romantic relationships, that the moment that we remove our masks and allow for our true selves to be out there, beautiful things can happen. And I think that it's the concern that I do have as a guy that's in social media and digital marketing is that sometimes we put up these very well constructed, almost too well constructed facades of bombast about our success and about how wonderful our lives are, when it might not necessarily always be that way, and that we would find truer, deeper, more meaningful and more beautiful relationships if we would all just take a step back and allow ourselves to be more vulnerable. And that's what the talk is about. I'm very, very proud of it. I tell a few different stories. I talk about my daughters. I talk about my friend Sean Lugano that was murdered on September 11th. I talk about my father who passed away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And frankly, it's the sort of maraschino cherry on my career that I am feel very fulfilled in my heart that I did it and I did it the right way.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Chris Dessi is the name of the man. Remarkable You is the name of the book. Check it out. You can follow his column on Inc. I think you'll love that. You can see his TED Talk and go to chrisdessi.com to stay connected. Chris, appreciate you being a beacon for vulnerability and an ambassador of vulnerability in the world, and for sharing some of that here.
Thanks.
Personal branding. What an interesting and sort of fascinating time, right? To be talking about personal branding. I mean, what was that? Even 10 years ago, it was like no one had ever heard of that concept. And it creates a whole bunch of challenges, I think, for companies, and frankly, I think a bunch of opportunities. And it is one of the things I think that we have done well at Southwestern Consulting, because we decided intentionally, we made a very specific decision that we said we are going to promote principles more than personalities. And we said that when we first began, and I think it's one of the things that's allowed the company to scale, because we're not a one-man show or a one-woman show. There's not one guy who's a guru. We are a team, and we do promote personalities, though. And I think that is also really important, because a lot of business is very personality driven, right? I mean, there's lots of cases where people don't do business with companies, they do business with people. And they do business because of relationships, and they do business because of trust. And so that personal brand, because of the explosion of social media, has become tremendously valuable. And I think businesses, I think there's two ends of the spectrum on this. And I think that there is a third alternative, which is what we're trying to do. I mean, I think one end of the perspective here is companies that want no personal branding whatsoever. It's like we're all the blue shirts of IBM. We're all wearing the same uniform. We're the same person, no individual identity. And I think that is honestly not a maximizing strategy for today. I mean, we live in a world of social media. We live in a world of interpersonal connectedness more than ever before. And I think, frankly, you're undervaluing your people if you aren't allowing them and encouraging them and perhaps even incentivizing them to develop their own personal brand and brand awareness, because that's tremendously valuable for your company when your team members or partners or employees or whatever, when they take on the badge of the company and they are proud to promote a piece of who they are associated with your business. So I think that is huge. And the other end of the spectrum, and you see this a lot, is it's all about the personal brand, right? Like it's just me, it's me.com. And when you go to my social media channel, it's just selfies of me. And I guess that's okay too, but I think that there's a real opportunity for scalable businesses to find the best of both worlds, to leverage the personal brand to benefit the company, and for the company's growing platform to benefit the individual. And there's some really great examples of it, right? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and you have Tony Hsieh with Zappos. I mean, I think Howard Schultz with Starbucks. Like you see, those are great example. Gary Vaynerchuk has done this, and it doesn't take anything away from the company to have big personal brands, as long as people aren't arrogant and egotistical, right? But that is going to happen anyways, regardless of how many Twitter followers they have. If someone's going to be arrogant, they're going to be arrogant regardless. So I think it's really curious, and it's been a fun and challenging and sometimes controversial topic for us to discuss at Southwestern Consulting, but we have landed on the place that we promote principles more than personalities. We do promote personalities, though. It's not that we don't promote them. It's just that all of the personalities inside the business are subservient to the mission, subservient to helping people achieve their goals in life, to being the most trusted sales performance company worldwide, and to changing the way the world thinks about selling, to elevate the perception of sales, right? Those are the core parts of who we are and why we exist. Now, inside of that, you can have big personalities. There's no reason. In fact, the bigger the personalities become, the bigger the company's platform becomes. So we're fans of it, but it does create challenges and all that sort of stuff. But anyways, what I wanted to talk through here is 6 ways for you to build your personal brand. Some of these were things that Chris kind of touched on and talked about, but I think I just wanted to boil it down here to an actionable list for you, right? So that if you're taking notes or whatever, or you're just thinking, okay, what do I do after hearing that conversation? If you buy into the value of a personal brand on some level, whether it's to to grow your own personal profile or to leverage it to benefit your company. Or, if you're wanting to kind of market yourself as some type of speaker or thought leader or expert or whatever, that you're going to do this. So here they are, and they're simple. They're simple, but they are, this is the deal, right? This is how it is done. Number one, and you cannot overlook this, I think this is the most important of all the 6. Do excellent work. Do excellent work. Do amazing work. Have everybody, when you put your name on a project or on a piece of client work or a piece of anything, your name needs to be associated with excellence. That is a huge part of personal branding, right? Because I think sometimes people go, I'm going to leave a company so I can go build my personal brand. No, you're already lost, right? Your personal brand starts with who you are. Crush it where you're at and who you have been. So whatever you're doing, be excellent at what is right in front of you. That is huge because that reputation follows you everywhere, always. Do excellent work. Number 2, build meaningful relationships. Build meaningful relationships. And what is a meaningful relationship? I mean, the way that I would think about that is pay attention to people who are movers and shakers in your industry, right? Pay attention to the people who are making things happen, to the people who are showing up different places and who are doing things and people that you continually see around online and get to know them and find out who the influencers are and make yourself known to them. I mean, you become popular by association and you are who you hang out with. And when it comes to building a personal brand, your brand is driven by the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, that is just that's been the same since elementary school and, for 1,000 years, and it doesn't change. So who do you know and I don't mean like who do you know like whose name can you drop. I'm talking about like build relationships with people who are making stuff happen, because those are people that you can be learning from and doing projects with and getting to know and supporting and serving them and giving them referrals and having them refer you. So build meaningful relationships, specifically with the movers and shakers. And that just means spending time with them, right? It's not doing any sort of weird voodoo mind tricks. It's just get to know and pay attention to who these people are. And that will build your personal brand for sure. Number 3, increase industry visibility. Increase industry visibility. What are you doing to be active in your industry? I remember one of the ways that I met so many people when I first joined the National Speakers Association, now several years ago, was I was the youth chair. Right? I didn't know anything about what I was doing related to the conference. I was new to speaking, but they do this program where all the speakers can bring their kids. And Eric Chester, one of my mentors, was the conference chair, and he needed a volunteer to run the youth program. And so he talked to me about it. Well, I met every famous speaker you can imagine, right? Every famous speaker that was in NSA, it's like they all had kids, and all the active speakers all brought their kids. And within 1 year, I knew everybody. And I mean, this is one of the best ways, by the way, to generate business is to be on boards with, like nonprofits. You'll be amazed at how many tremendously uber successful people are on boards of associations and nonprofits. It's one of the best ways to both build meaningful relationships and increase your industry visibility, because you have an association that's promoting all the people who are the volunteers and who are the the chairs and the presidents and all that sort of stuff. The other thing I would say is speaking. Speak at those conferences, show up at the industry events. If you can, and you have some expertise, hopefully you're teaching it, but if not, just go as an attendee, and, the magic happens in the hallways. Like it drives your business to be connected to other people in your industry. So get to events and shake hands and kiss babies and meet people. And even if you're not learning anything in the sessions, you're building a personal brand, and that people can associate you with some type of expertise. So do that. Number 4, to the extent possible, forward the thought leadership. Forward thought leadership. That is a way that you build personal branding. What do I mean by forward thought leadership? To me, forwarding thought leadership is about become an expert on what has been said or written or documented in your specific area of profession or interest or expertise, right? Know all the rules of the game before you change them. Because what that allows you to do is speak intelligently about the research that's been done, and you become educated on the nomenclature that exists inside of a space. But then, this is the magic, is do the hard work of adding thinking to what's been done. Don't just regurgitate what has been said and not even just repackage it, but try to forward the thinking. Try to add something to the conversation. And, part of increasing industry visibility could be speaking. It can be writing, like articles in trade magazines or whatever. But even if you're just sharing things that in one-on-one conversations with other industry leaders, do what you can to add to the conversation and pull from lots of different areas. So I think that's a huge one. Number 5, be a student. Be a student. That goes directly with number 4, forward thought leadership, because that's the best way to become the expert, right? Is to learn everything and then know what hasn't been said and say it, add to that conversation. But it starts with being a student. I think so many times we think of personal branding as just like this megaphone of talking to the world about who you are, but it's sort of speak softly and carry a big stick. You've heard that. I think it's more about speak infrequently and carry a big stick. So you're quiet because you're learning, you're digesting, you're reading, you're listening, you're processing on what has been said. You're a student first. And then when the opportunity comes up, you have something to say that is something that is really unique, that is real thought leadership. It's really forwarding the conversation, but that starts with learning first. And then number 6, and hey, I don't like this any more than you do necessarily, but is use social media. You got to use social media. You do. Look, it doesn't matter if we like it, right? Enjoying it is not a requirement of doing it. It's the vehicle, the medium of which everything happens, right? I'm sure there were people who did not like the telephone when it came out, and there's people who didn't like email when it came out. But that is the mode of communication, and because that interpersonal communication is what drives brand awareness, you have to be able to learn to use the tools. So what does that mean? It can be Facebook posts. I mean, if you don't like to write, Facebook Live is huge right now, right? Just turn on your camera and go live and share ideas, share useful information, and you can do that. You can, of course, podcast, you can blog, you can write articles, but one of my favorite places to do this, particularly if you're in you're trying to build real credibility, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has its own blogging platform called Pulse. So it's like you don't even have to know how to start a blog or manage a blog. Just go into LinkedIn, search for Pulse, and then post your first article, and LinkedIn will archive everything for you, and you get huge, tremendous awareness and visibility from using that platform. The thing I would just caution you with, so those are the 6. Do excellent work, build meaningful relationships, increase industry visibility, forward thought leadership, be a student, and use social media. The thing that you got to be careful of is not to associate personal branding with personal worth. Don't ever mistake personal branding for personal worth. Like, you are not the number of Twitter followers you have, right? You are not the number of blog subscribers or the number of people in your email list. You're just not. Now, do those things play a valuable role in shaping the perception of your value? Sure they do. But you can't attach your value to those arbitrary things. I mean, the real value, I think, is delivered by your real expertise in the real channels that you deliver it that create real results for your clients or for your employer or for your industry, right? So I think those things can help forward your brand, but make sure to separate that from your identity of who you are, because otherwise, you don't want to become the guy who is Twitter rich, but has no friends in real life. I mean, right? That's not what we want to do. We want to just build a reputation of honest, trustworthy, legitimate expertise that is service-oriented, service-minded, that really, really helps people. And honestly, that doesn't have that much to do with your personal followers online. So I think just be aware of that, and hopefully, if you're leading a company, that's the thing you got to be careful of, because when you do become internet famous, there's a whole little mental thing that comes along with that has to be managed, and has to be, you have to just kind of work your way through that pride, and it's pride. I mean, it's one of the things that you just got. It's like any other challenge, you deal with it and you move on. But I think that personal branding is huge to the strategic future of the growth of businesses. Everybody is a brand today. You are a brand, whether you like it or not. What do people think of when they think of you? And they all think something, so you might as well be trying to shape that on some level, without tying too much of your self-esteem, to what they're saying. But from a business standpoint, get on top of your personal brand, right? Like, get out there, at least get your name on your name.com, get your name on Instagram and Twitter, even if you're not using them, right? Like, lock up some of those things so that you can find those, so you can lock down those pieces of virtual real estate so that you at least have them. And so at least to protect you against something negative, you want to be doing that. But hey, as my friend Scott McCain once said, all business is show business. That is the world today. It's the world of personal branding. All business is show business. So be mindful of who you're being on stage. Well, that about wraps up the Action Catalyst podcast for this week. If you haven't yet, please log in to whatever your favorite medium is to listen to the show, and both rate this podcast and leave a comment, as that helps new prospective listeners determine if the show's really a good fit for them.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and screenshot this episode to share with your friends on social media. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst, and subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. Thanks for listening.